Thank you so much for attending. We're really excited. We're really excited to have this whole event starting tonight. We're calling it the Startup Industry Night, but really it's about entrepreneurship and in varying ways. So I'm Robin Kahn. I am an associate director in the Career Center, working mostly with engineers and computer scientists. My partner in crime is Sue Atkins, and she is the Associate Director for Employer Relations. And we've been lucky enough to partner on this event with Elaine Chen, who's the director of the Derby Entrepreneurship Center, and she's going to have a commercial before we go into the breakout room, so you'll get to hear from her as well. Sue will be handling the chat room. If you have any questions, you can write directly to Sue, or you can put the questions in the chat so that people can see them. We're going to have the first 40-ish minutes to be panel and your questions to the panel as a panel. And then we will go to breakout rooms where all of our startup / entrepreneurial humans, guests, will be in rooms, and students will be able to see them by name. Sue had sent anyone that was registered a sheet with everyone's name on it and their company, but we'll put that in the chat as well. And you'll be able to move in and out of rooms at will to talk to people individually. With that, if we can start our panel with Julia, Alex, Tomas, and Kevin. And we're really excited to hear from them. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And also, in your intro, if you wouldn't mind talking about where you are now, you can say a little bit about your company, because I'm sure that's part of what you want to do. But then what I'd really like you to do is also talk about what you did at Tufts, and if anything here helped you get where you are. And then we'll get to the second question. Okay, let's do this. Tomas, you were the first one in, so do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Tomas Garcia. I graduated Tufts in 2012, so I guess over 10 years ago. Time goes fast. I majored in quantitative economics and international relations. I was a member of Tufts mock trial, as well as the TCU Senate. So I have a lot of fond memories around those two organizations. I'll go back to kind of Tufts after, just kind of walking through my background. I started my career at Goldman Sachs, so I was in the investment banking division in New York for 3 years. I left Goldman and I went and I got my JD MBA at the University of Chicago. So I was in Chicago for quite some time, doing a lot of academics, and then ultimately that led me into real estate development. So I was working with my brother, doing some real estate development together, and that's actually where my business ARCS comes out of. So ARCS is an AI-driven real estate analytics platform. We help developers, investors, and agents source optimal investment and development opportunities for their specific market criteria. So that's, if you're interested in real estate, I'm somebody who's that's kind of been my domain for the last couple of years. So I'm more than happy to take any questions on that. As far as Tufts goes, as I mentioned, I was in mock trial and the TCU Senate. Very, very fond memories of both of those, and they do play a very, very significant role in sort of my entrepreneurial journey. A lot of mock trial and a lot of Senate is talking to other people. It's communicating ideas. It's learning from other people and figuring out the best way forward on a specific path. And I think that is core to what entrepreneurship is in a lot of senses. So yeah, that's my background.
Fabulous. Julia, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Novakoff. I graduated from Tufts in 2018, undergrad in human factors, and then in 2019 went on to do the MSIM program. And currently I'm a senior product designer at One Medical. We were recently acquired by Amazon. Prior to that, I was working for Iora Health. And I got into the product design space via fintech made the transition into healthcare. And going back to my time at Tufts, the MSIM program, I think it was crucial to my success in leading me down the path of UX design. Taught me how to work with cross-functional teams and be very agile, despite being inside of a large company, still able to operate sort of as if we are working on a mini sprint team. So yeah, any questions or interest in product design, definitely happy to answer anything about that.
Kevin, although you are not a Tufts grad, we're really glad you are here. Tell them why we had you on our panel, and you can talk about what MIT did for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor and to be here, and slightly intimidating to be the only non-Tufts person on the panel. But I was, well, right now I'm the Chief Technology Officer of a startup called Takachar, and I spent 9 years living in Boston. Got my PhD from MIT Biological Engineering 2017, and during that time worked quite a lot with various students from Northeastern, from Tufts, and also from the unnamed university further up in Cambridge. Yes, and really enjoyed the whole ecosystem. And I think that's what made our startup come into being. And just a 2-sentence summary, our work is around increasing the amount of crop and forest residues economically converted into useful products, such as biofuels, chemicals, and fertilizers. And a lot of the premise is that these residues are often loose, wet, and bulky, making them very difficult and expensive to collect and transport. And most rural communities are often shut off from the benefits of the bioeconomy and can only burn their residues. So we develop small-scale, low-cost portable systems that can latch onto the back of tractors and pickup trucks that deploy to rural, hard-to-access regions to locally operate and densify the residue. And that came out of my PhD work at MIT.
Fabulous. I'm sure people will want to talk to you about that. And Alex, I haven't seen you in forever. How are you doing? And tell everyone else how you're doing.
It's great to see you, Robin. Well, everyone, my name is Alex Kim, proud Tufts alum, class 2017, mechanical engineering major at that time, did robotics, was doing that kind of in industry, more so on the biotech side. I had an opportunity to work at Thermo Fisher Scientific, where I was working there in 2020, working on diagnostics products. And so the crazy thing about that story is that I ended up getting pulled into a COVID, the second approved COVID testing facility in the whole US. And so had the craziest 3 months during March to May of 2020. I'm very proud of our work there. I was able to scale up to like 5 million units. And so very amazing experience. Love that. Went to a startup. Love that. And so got the guts to go do my own thing and get into the startup world. And so now building Homebase, helping people invest in real estate for as little as $100. It's tokenized real estate, going through Techstars right now. Amazing accelerator, Techstars Boulder, and currently live in New York City. But yeah, proud Tufts alum. Wouldn't be here without Robin, who was guiding me when I was just a pup with no idea, very starry-eyed, didn't know what I was doing. And also did stuff like I played on the football team. And so I was actually shocked, Robin, that I was picked because you had Sean Harrington is on like the later calls. I'm like, why would you pick? Sean's got an exit. He's like, Sean is, I am humbled by being next to this established crew here and the STEAM crew, and really appreciate the time. Like really excited to be here. So yeah.
Okay, so I have one more for now group question that I do want each of you to answer. And I think really the question boils down to why startups, why small? And Julie, I realize you were small until you got bought up and now you're not small anymore, but talk a little bit about why that's interesting. What words would you use to describe the difference between, many of you have worked in larger organizations in the past. Can you just give us an example, you know, some words of wisdom of why you're doing what you're doing? We'll go backwards this time. Alex, you can start.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this weekend has made me think about that a little bit more. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention in terms of like everything happening with banking industry as well. A lot of stress. I'm not even directly exposed to SVB by any means, but my friends with 5 million in the bank, 40 million in the bank, 100 million in the bank, just unable to access any of those funds, the stress that they're going through. My friends at SVB as well. There's quite a few Tufts alums that have been working at SVB as well. So really feel for them as well. And so like the question always comes up, like, why go through that level of stress? And like, ultimately it comes down to the missions that everyone's trying to solve. And so the reason why I get so excited about startups is like the idea of bringing innovation into industries that you've had experience in, or innovation in applications that you're like, hey, this would port over really well from here to there. I think it's really creates really cool opportunities. You get to meet a lot of cool people along the way. And it's like kind of that alternate approach. Instead of working at like a big company and everyone's working towards the same project, it's like, hey, you're one of X number of founders and you're friends with all these other founders and you're all working towards 100 different projects, but you're all going through a lot of the same pains. So just a different approach, but really fun to innovate. That's for sure.
Great. Kevin?
Yeah, and for us, I guess we evolved almost organically. I mean, initially this was a public service project out of the MIT. At that time, I was in Kenya looking at how to turn crop and forest residues into a low-cost cooking fuel so that people don't have to cut down trees. So initially it was a public service project, but then I guess there was like we gradually saw the scaling potential, and that's how I guess we got into a startup just as a vehicle to scale and move forward the technology as well as the core work. And as I was graduating from MIT back in 2017, I could go into academia and continue doing the invention there, but what I realized was that if I had pursued that route, the technology most likely would have sat on the shelf, right? And the story seemed compelling enough to essentially make it a goal, right? And see whether we could actually turn that into a reality to spin that out.
So Julia, one of the reasons that you are on the panel is that you are in what was a startup that is now been purchased, which I think often is the end goal of the people starting them, or one possible goal. But for you, it was really about the work or being a designer. Can you say more about that, or whether startup at all was even important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about my answer, actually a little bit similar to Alex, is less about the size and more about the mission. And the reason why I've continued to work for One Medical through acquisitions is that I've still been able to find that mission clearly drive, everything that my team works on. I started my career in fintech. As I mentioned, I worked in a startup incubator, so very small teams. And I just personally didn't relate to the mission as much in fintech, which is why I pivoted over to healthcare, and that's where I'll stay. Yeah, so long as the mission keeps driving us forward. Yeah.
Tomas?
Yeah, hey, I think there might be somebody not on mute, and there's some feedback. I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing that, but just watch out for that if you have speakers, maybe go on mute. Not wearing headphones. But yeah, so I think that, just to echo Alex and the rest of the panelists have said, it's all about mission, right? So for me, the two words that I would use to describe entrepreneurship is passionate chaos, because chaos is your day-to-day life. Entrepreneurship is not something for somebody who needs an extreme, a very, very structured, rigorous, more like waterfall or Gantt chart to follow in order to function. It is every single day is a job where you wake up and, I might have an idea of what I was supposed to be doing today. I can guarantee you that everything on my checklist that I had planned for today has not gotten done. Instead, a million other things happen because I got a bunch of emails or phone calls, or your attention gets pulled in a million different directions. So it's constant chaos from that perspective. And then why do you do it? It's really about being passionate about something. It's about having a mission or something that drives you, the reason that you get out of bed every single day and continue to work on this dream. Because I can tell you that, entrepreneurship is very, very difficult. You receive a lot of rejection in entrepreneurship. You have a lot of people telling you no. You have a lot of people telling you that what you're trying to achieve is not possible. And that, to deal with that rejection, you need to have a certain level of passion. You need to have a certain level of conviction that, what you're doing or the mission that you're on or what you're bringing to the world needs to exist. So I think that that was sort of the biggest transformation for me, just vis-a-vis going from a large corporation entrepreneurship is now it's, that the agenda is not being set by somebody else. If I wake up tomorrow and I don't want to work, I don't have to work, right? I run my own business, but if I don't work, the mission is not going to be achieved. And so that's really entrepreneurship in a nutshell for me.
So that leads me to a question that's not on my list. When you are a founder and you're starting something, how do you staff with people that are going to get up in the morning and go to work and have that passion? What is it that you're looking for? Because maybe the people in the audience won't start their own company tomorrow, but they might want to work for someone like you. What are you looking for?
For me personally, what we're looking for are, we right now we have 4 employees. We just hired them in December. And what we were looking for in that hiring process was one, sort of a very, very high technical level. So folks who, and when I say technical, I don't mean just, good at one thing, right? Like going super, super deep in one area and knowing that really well. I mean, just a technical individual, somebody who is very thoughtful about how they approach life. So it might, I'm just saying technical, but it doesn't have to be, like coding or math basis. It has to be, somebody who's very analytical in their mindset and their thinking, somebody who's very flexible, particularly at an early stage startup. We have, there's 6 of us. Like I mentioned, every single day can be chaos. And so somebody who can roll with the punches, somebody who doesn't mind, that fact that we've been working on something for about 2 weeks and all of a sudden we're about to fire drill and focus on something completely different for the next 3 days. And we're going to crunch really hard on delivering that and then focus on something else. So it's flexibility, it's an analytic mindset, it's a collaborative environment. So somebody who really likes to, go off and be on their own and not work with the team, that's not really going to work in a small scale, entrepreneurial environment. So it's collaboration, analytics, and I already forgot what the last one was. That's how my day is going. So whatever that last one was, add that one also to the list. That's a good one. I'm sure somebody else will say it.
Kevin, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, so when it comes to hiring, that's something we're still ironing out, obviously, as we're growing. But we like to take a human-centric approach, right? And our philosophy is that it's as much about the employee as it is about us as a company, right? So normally we like to get to know the employee. I mean, just sort of in terms of where they like to see themselves in 3 years, in 5 years, right? And just framing this less as what they can do for us, but rather, can we also help them succeed, right? And kind of make this almost a mutually kind of beneficial kind of partnership, right? And sort of at least to get that into that mindset, I think is important. And so, I mean, so that we know kind of what to expect of them, and they also feel supported, and there's a space for them in a company like ours, right? Because normally the jobs can shift, right? So I think a lot of the times the background experience matters a lot less as that mindset of being able to be adaptable and really kind of being in tune with kind of the company's vision and mission and perform kind of in tune with that.
Which is something we in the Career Center say all the time, is your major doesn't define you. Julia, maybe yours does. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I think, so like I mentioned, I have 2 degrees from Tufts. I started undergrad in human factors. And then the way that I describe the MSIM program to outsiders who've never heard of it is essentially it's a program that helps you apply your existing background, whatever it may be. In my case, human factors, UX design, applying that to a business context, specifically a pretty like hardcore round of like jumping into entrepreneurship. I think that experience has just accelerated those foundational skills I had, and allowed me to sort of be a more well-rounded cross-functional team player within my team, and do really cool and exciting work instead of just being kind of a pixel pusher UX designer. I get to focus on the mission, and yeah, I don't think that I would have landed where I landed without that experience.
Great. Alex, you had a lot of big company experience prior to then going to startup and then starting your own startup. So what did the big company give you that you brought to the startups, or would you say that you could have started at the startups had you wanted to?
Yeah, I definitely, I appreciate my time at bigger companies. I think big companies always teach you like two things, and for better or for worse, right? Like how to create systems and what systems look like in end state. And then number two, how much you don't like working at big companies, in short. So like they'll teach you both of those very well, very quickly. And I think to both Julia and Tomas just said this as well, it's like a lot having to do with, I think, like mission driven work and being able to push through in like a startup sense. Like if you're that type of person that's more so like, you're in class and you realize you're a generalist, right? And that you like doing a lot of things, you like succeeding at everything. You don't mind failure. You like being able to push through and like, hey, I really want to get this done because I really care about this, not just because I'm going to do this for a paycheck or anything like that. And I think you'll really like entrepreneurship. You'll really like the startup lifestyle. But yeah, I think ultimately the big companies do teach you a lot. Those two things are just the things I had in mind for sure.
That's somewhat funny. So another thing that I think is interesting is that of this group of people, varying majors, but Kevin, it looks to me like you took your PhD research and applied it directly to what you're doing. Can you talk about whether there would have been another way there, and whether you envision other startups later, or is this the thing and you'll do it in a variety of ways?
So your question is sort of whether, I mean, I'm trying to understand, are you meaning that, are you talking about PhD is being the necessary part to what we are doing here at Takachar?
Well, so that was your entry to this, right? Was your actual research. Will you branch from there to other startups because you now love them, or do you think you'll just always be at Takachar and keep doing more research that way?
That's an interesting question, and not something I guess I admit I have given a lot of thought on, just given that how busy things are even in Takachar. And yeah, I mean, I definitely think that I mean, the skills I've learned, I think both from my graduate work as well as the startup is a lot broader, right? I mean, there's definitely kind of the hardcore engineering stuff, right? But I mean, after a certain level, especially at a C-suite level, I mean, a lot of that becomes managing people and also just teaching, right? Teaching different skills and sort of reinforcing the kind of the architecture of the company, right? So a lot of those definitely is transferable, right? Whether I in the future, if I do go into another startup or industry or academia, right? I mean,
You have all those skills.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay, so one of the things I noticed is that, Alex, you're part of Techstars now, and Tomas, you actually just won an Ivory Prize. How important are those outside influences in terms of money, training, those kinds of things?
I'm happy to start, Tomas, or you can go.
Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah.
It's one of those things that it is, I feel truly blessed to be going through Techstars right now. I think it's taught us a ton. I think a lot of people, you don't necessarily need it, but it does make things easier sometimes. Like you are giving, like for something that is like an accelerator, you are giving a portion of equity in exchange for money, but like the return in terms of resources is just so great. Something I know that Robin used to hammer home to me, and I always tried to do it, but never knew how to go about it, was like mentorship. And I think the biggest thing that Techstars forces you into is like literally like 10 to 20 hours of forced mentorship every week with industry experts. Like our mentors are like CTO of PayPal, like multiple exit startups, like head of or partners at like VC firms based out of New York and Colorado, right? And like these kinds of resources really set you up to like understand either what does that side of the table look like, what are best practices here, or like how the heck do I just get this done because you've just never done something before. And so I think just being able to, you don't necessarily need to like go through any of these programs or have that validation, but always helps. Just like be willing to like have those trade-offs and have those conversations with your co-founders.
Great. And then Tomas?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with everything Alex just said. So we went through an accelerator program. It was more industry specific. So we went through the National Association of Realtors REACH program. And it's pretty much the same thing where it's very much there's a trade-off between sort of, it is diluted. You do have to give up some equity compensation. But at the end of the day, there is this sort of, it opens up a lot of doors for you, right? So now all of a sudden you're part of a network, you're plugged into, I'm assuming Alex is plugged into pretty much every single Techstars class that has come before him. Those founders are all now a resource to him. Similarly, all of the prior founders in the NAR REACH program are resources to us, my brother and I. I am a little bit more cynical as well, in the sense that I also view sort of the brand recognition can be massive. As somebody who I'll be the first to say that I am terrible with marketing. It is not my forte. That's also very important as a founder to know what your weaknesses are. I have had to learn the hard way, the importance of putting your company out there, being part of these accelerator programs that can instantly give you a visibility boost, that can instantly give you legitimacy, that can, to the Ivory Prize, there are a lot of industry awards, right, that are out there. So the Ivory Prize in particular is one that's geared towards housing affordability. So being a finalist for that prize, that has opened a lot of doors for us, right? So now we're being invited to speak on podcasts, to talk on, YouTube series with real estate influencers, which sounds just as lame as it might sound, when I say it out loud like that. Like there's all sorts of these sort of opportunities and doors that open for you when you do, join these larger networks. The one thing that I would say is I completely agree with Alex. You don't need it. It's not right for everyone. It's on a case-by-case basis. You definitely can do without it. And I would also say that, you also want to be very cautious of these accelerator programs, because there are big names. So, for example, like Techstars is a name that everybody knows, right? Techstars is very legitimate. There are a lot of less reputable accelerator programs out there that are going to charge the exact same financial terms as Techstars, and they're going to deliver you a tiny little sliver of the value that Techstars would deliver you, or the REACH program in real estate would deliver you. So you have to be very, always go into these things with eyes wide open. Because there are things out there that are not necessarily right for you, and they might be looking just to take advantage of you as a starting founder who's not, who might not know otherwise.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that is a great call, Tomas, because we got reached out to when we were just starting out by like New Chip Accelerator, which I think has hit the news a little bit, and like just literally these people were approaching startups, be like, hey, like pay to be part of our accelerator. We'll go do all this, like literally pay for it, and then it was basically just a scheme to just extort or like just get people's money, right? So gotta definitely be careful, and some are definitely better than others, but yeah, completely agree with Tomas there.
That's great. I just looked at the clock, and boy, does time go fast when you're having fun. Sue, do we have questions from the audience that you want to ask so that we get more questions answered?
We have one. I know Omar put his question in the chat about, how do you start, right? Say you have this idea and you want to get started tomorrow. What's kind of the starting point for you guys when you were founding your startup organizations? Where would you kind of point someone to get going? in addition to the great resources that Elaine posted from the Derby Center, of course.
Yeah, I mean, those resources look great. I kind of wish I had those when I was figuring this out. That maybe they existed and I just didn't know. That's my bad.
Well, that's the reason for
but-
today, is so everyone on the call knows.
There we go. Okay, I feel a little bit better about myself now. Thanks, Elaine. They're new. Okay. I mean, I think a big I haven't even looked at the resources, but start with why. I think starting with why is by far the most important thing. Like I said earlier, you know, startups are typically mission driven. If you're doing it just with the dream of getting a fantastical payout at some point in the future, strongly reconsider your desire to do entrepreneurship, because that is a very, very small fraction of startups go on to have those types of exits. Typically, it's more about your day-to-day, it's more about the mission. So you really need to be passionate about something. The other thing that I would say is, you know, it's you know, kind of playing off the point, I think, Robin, that you said earlier, where your major doesn't define you. I think I particularly, when I was just out of college, I was very short-sighted, and I thought that everything that I was doing kind of right, you know, when I started at Goldman, I was super eager and I was like, this is going to be my career. Your career is long. Your career is not just, you know, what you do 2 years out of college, 5 years out of college, 10 years out of college. You know, like when Kevin's being asked to answer, you know, what are you going to do next? It's like, I don't know yet, right? Because we're all thinking about sort of what we're doing right now. So I would also kind of, you know, take comfort in that. You know, what you do straight out of college doesn't define you. You know, in my accelerator program, you know, there were founders who were in their 50s. So it's not something that has to be done immediately. So if you don't have if you haven't been able to answer the question why, you don't sort of have an idea or a team or a group that has an idea that you're passionate about, you know, there's no rush. You can always go work for, you know, a larger organization, like it sounds like a lot of us on the panel did. You know, develop your skill set there, build your network, and then when you're finally able to answer that question, you know, that's when you can jump in and get started. So definitely answer the question why, and also, you know, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. That's something that hopefully takes you longer than one day just to come up with, because if your life was determined in one day, then that would be a pretty boring life. Yeah.
So Kevin, it sounds like I asked you a mean question before. Would you like to answer this one, which is less mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I echo a lot of what Tomas and the other panelists have said. I mean, for us, maybe I'm just kind of more conservative, but we kind of almost bootstrap for, I don't know, 7 years before we actually spun that out as a company. And I think in retrospect, that's probably the right decision, because at that time when I was just fresh out of, I mean, kind of, I was still in school, I wasn't even fresh out of school. A lot of what I thought was extremely naive, right? And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, right? And so at that time, I mean, when you are a startup, you kind of feel, well, I want to spin this out right away, right? And kind of scale that. But I think a lot of that does take a lot of time. And especially for my company, a lot of that is on hardware technology. So it does take more time to do those scientific experiments to prove the product. So for us, for example, we kind of hijacked the MIT kind of ecosystem, right? And essentially founded the initial prototyping work through kind of internal MIT research, which became my PhD work, and kind of used that as a vehicle to advance the startup at the same time getting my degree, right? And there are other entrepreneurial things you could think of, whether potentially in the university ecosystem or even in your own companies, that potentially would be worthwhile pursuing kind of without kind of risk. I mean, with sort of better resources behind you, right? To really make, I mean, to prove that the idea is actually something that can gain traction and has a scientific basis before you can decide to go all in into the startup.
Thank you. Sue, did you have any other questions? Audience, do you have questions that you want to actually turn on your camera and ask?
I didn't have any, Robin, any additional ones at this moment.
No one else has questions?
I have a question.
Excellent. Hi, Lily.
Hi, Robin. If you want to start like a entrepreneurial project, but you don't know like something that you're passionate enough about, like how did you guys find like what you're passionate about? Or in other words, like a problem that's worth solving, because a lot of problems out there aren't really worth solving more than others. So how do you go about finding that one thing that's worth solving and that you're passionate about?
Julia, I want to give you a chance to speak. If you have an answer here, if you would like to just pass, then that's fine too.
I can definitely jump in on this one quickly. Just try things out, try different things out. I joined a fintech startup incubator with really no background knowledge of financial technologies, and I did everything from like real estate tech to like small business lending, and just tried things. Eventually realized that I think just fintech in general wasn't where I was passionate about, what I was passionate about. My mom is a nurse, and that kind of drove me towards healthcare is something that I could like relate more to on a personal level. And just jumped in and tried it out with, again, no prior experience in healthcare. And I found that there are billions, maybe even trillions of problems in healthcare that we could solve, more than just one company can tackle. But I've gotten to work on a lot of cool projects. And yeah, it was all just a matter of jumping in, trying things out.
Trying things out. That's great.
I've got a answer here that I think will answer both Lily, your question, and Omar's as well, because I've got a hard take on this one. If you want to begin an entrepreneurial endeavor, I challenge you to talk to 50 people about it. If you're still passionate about it after you talk to 50 people, first of all, you're gonna have a ton of data about like what your customer actually wants. And then second of all, you're gonna realize like, wait, do I hate this? Because I just had to talk to 50 people about this. I just spent like 25 hours of my life the past like 2 weeks doing this. You can very quickly make that decision. You can immediately springboard that into insights. Like if you will hop on any VC call, they're gonna ask you like, tell me all about your customer. If you can tell people all about your customer and you know them like the back of your hand, like that is just truly invaluable. And so again, you don't hate it after that, and you have all those insights, that's a huge step ahead, and you're ahead of a lot of entrepreneurs in that way.
The other thing that I would add on to that is also, even before you arrive at the problem that you might want to solve, like how do you come up with your why or your mission? It's the same answer. It's talk to a bunch of people. I think that's a lesson that I learned probably a little bit too late. I hope that a lot of you guys are already starting to build your networks in college. I hope you guys have LinkedIn's and you're doing all that. One of my law school colleagues did not have a LinkedIn, which was shocking to me. He just created one. He's 30. Don't wait until you're 30 to start your LinkedIn. Start it as soon as possible, right? That's your network. And really that's you might have a mission, you might not even know it. And the way that you're going to find that mission is by talking to other people. It's ideation, it's bouncing thoughts off of people, it's putting finding folks who are a little bit further along in their career, asking them if you can put 30 minutes on their calendar, right? I don't want to volunteer the other panelists, but I would say like that's a pretty good starting point, right? You have 4 folks up here who are a little bit further along in their career. They're a little bit further along in their entrepreneurial endeavors. Don't be shy. Reach out, shoot an email, say, hey, can I grab 30 minutes on your calendar? Do that for every single senior person in your life that you might know of who might be in some industry that is totally unrelated to anything you've ever thought about doing. Like there's a massive amount of knowledge transfer across industries. Things are relevant that you might not even see the connection until they start talking to you. Like I'm not a scientist. My father's an electrical engineer. My mother's a physicist. They're very, very disappointed that I'm not a scientist, but I take lessons from their experiences in electrical engineering and physics and apply that to real estate technology. There's so many synergies across disciplines that you really will have no idea until you start talking to people. So network, follow up with people, ask to grab, 30 minutes on somebody's calendar. You're not going to be a bother. I promise you that they will likely make the time for you. It might not be tomorrow, it might be a couple weeks out, but people in general want to help other people. And that's something that, took me too long to realize. I wish I had realized that earlier. But so that would be my thing is go, people to people, and that can help you discover, something that you're really passionate about.
And I think maybe just to build on a panelist's point, I definitely 100% agree that talking to people, customers, team members, and also other stakeholders, investors is the right way to go, because you actually know how you get to learn how the real world functions. And a way normally I like to, when I teach our employees how to engage, normally the way I think about this is just doing short experiments, right? I think both on your own idea as well as on the world around you, right? I think if, for example, you have an app idea or something about that solves a problem, don't just go and code that app day one, right? Actually talk to people. That's one way to do hypothesis testing, right? That they actually care about what you offer them. And then maybe even just build a black box, even if that means you have to operate the system to deliver the results to them rather than through an automated coding, just to show that it actually works, right? So small experiments like that adds up, right? And it's a lot cheaper than spending a whole year or two doing something, building something that nobody cares about.
Thank you. That sort of answered Emma's question too. If you have an app idea that you're passionate about, how should you do it? Should you do it on your own, learning to code, or build a team? And how would you go about doing that? And you're saying build a black box first, test the idea, and then go get your coder. Okay, I think that's great. So to keep us on time, I want to introduce you to Elaine Chen, who's the director of the Derby Center. She wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Derby Center, and then we're going to go back into rooms. What I want to remind you is the whole reason for tonight is we called it a networking industry night, and we will have all the people in rooms. So students, you can you can zoom around to all the rooms and ask your questions. We're delivering that network to you. So if the panelists are right and it's important to talk to people, do that tonight or start tonight. Elaine, the floor is yours.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I feel like I know a lot of the people here, but for those of you I haven't met, my name is Elaine Chan. I am a professor of practice in entrepreneurship, and I run the Derby Entrepreneurship Center. Fun fact, Kevin, Kong, and I actually met at MIT when I was an EIR at MIT, so it's very funny. So I am here to sell you a networking opportunity, or several. So I'm going to put a post in the chat. So what this Derby Entrepreneurship Center does, we help people develop an entrepreneurial mindset and skill set, and we are part of the Tufts Gordon Institute, which is which has the MS in Innovation and Management, MSIM. So we do lots of things. Tufts 100K competition is ours, and importantly, we are part of a multi-school coalition that puts up mega networking opportunities. The next one, so these things are called the Cross University Student Innovators Mixer, CUSI for short, and I did not name this thing. So if you click that link and you scroll down, April 5th, we're going to the MIT Engine, which is, by the way, not MIT, it's just Engine. But we typically draw students from over 20 universities. The last time we did it, like in February at Harvard, we had 350 people come. Literally, and then we did a pitch to match, and later on, I found that in the semifinals of the 100K this year, there was one team that met 1 year ago at our event here. So 1 year ago they met, and there was a Tufts team plus a Babson person, and then they met there. And then I also worked with a Tufts team that had a BU person that is actually advancing to finals. So it's magical to get into Boston and kind of like meet some of these other students from the other schools. So I strongly recommend everybody to go do that. If you're free April 5th, I'm sure they're going to feed us. So yeah, that's all, folks.